Hello, BookTube, and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. This week we have Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Roald Dahl, the BFG, the complete illustrated fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm by Jacob Grimm and Wilhelm Grimm, and the grammar book, an ESL/EFL Teacher's Course 2nd edition by Marianne, Celce-Murcia and Diane Larsen-Freeman. And apologies for all the letters showing up in reverse. This camera shoots in mirror image. So the whole video will be like that. Sorry. Okay. Well, yeah, actually, let's start with the basics, huh? I mentioned on my weekly reading vlog last week that I had intentions to shave the lockdown beard. As you can see, I have not, largely because I haven't had an opportunity to get out of the apartment to purchase shaving cream and more disposable razors. I think I could get to it. Well, I don't want to get into all the details about the lockdown in my area, but it's a fairly strict lockdown we got here in Ho Chi Minh City. You're not supposed to leave your apartment except for essentials. So I may venture out this week, and perhaps I'll give it a bit of a shave for next week, but no promises. It is getting kind of to the point where it's a little bit annoying now. Like the mustache hairs either need to be trimmed or need to go altogether. But you'll just have to put up with scruffy me for another video. Okay, that out of the way. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone I did not read this week. I had finished it off the previous week. The only extent of my involvement with it this past week was to finish up my written review and to film a video review, which I did earlier this week. So this one's gone now. I've finished it. I've reviewed it. It's off the rotation. And then Roald Dahl, the BFG. I made a started video for this a couple days ago, in which I said I anticipated finishing it off in a couple of days. But it's been a couple of days, and I'm only halfway through it. I'm only on page 120, which for a book like this is rather slow going, because this is a book that you should just breeze right on through. It's big print, lots of pictures, etc. But it's not been a great week for me reading. Despite being locked into my apartment, I'm still working, teaching online, etc., and a lot of marking this week, and just a lot of other life stuff I won't get into, to the extent that you can have life stuff while you're stuck in lockdown. So it's actually going to be a light reading week all around, but I'll get to that with the other books. Anyways, BFG, as I mentioned in the started video I made, is a something that I remember from childhood. My 3rd grade teacher read it to us, and I remember really enjoying it, although as I was discussing it with my wife recently, it turned out I remember very little of this book. The only thing I remembered really was the Fobscottle and Whiz Poppers, and didn't even remember the proper names for those. But if you're familiar with this book, you'll remember this part, I'm sure. So the giants have a soda where the carbonation goes down, the bubbles go down instead of up. I shouldn't call it carbonation, should I? It's some sort of thing. Which results in them having magical farts, which lift them off the ground. Although they never mention it as farts, they're whiz poppers. And that was the part that I think got the biggest reaction from my 3rd grade class, and that's the part I remembered. And it turns out I remembered very little of the rest of this book. So the part about the other giants bullying the BFG, here you can see the other giants throwing the BFG. The part about the BFG having to save Sophie from the other giants. Here's another giant. You can see the BFG is actually one of the smaller giants. something else I had completely forgotten about. I had more or less completely forgotten about everything. So, yeah, it's been interesting to reconnect with this book. I don't really know what I'm going to say, though, when I give it the full review, because it's not as brilliant as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Nor is it as disorganized as Charlie and the Big Glass Elevator. It's a perfectly serviceable children's book. It's got some of the classic Roald Dahl dark humor in here. But I'm not finding it laugh out loud funny like I did with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, when I reread that one a few weeks ago, that was something where I was constantly saying to my wife, "Oh, listen, this part is really funny," where I was chuckling to myself, and my wife was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "Well, this is a really good part here." That kind of book. The BFG is just kind of it's all right. And again, it's hard to judge these books as an adult. I certainly remember loving this when I was in third grade, and lots of laughter in my third grade class whenever the teacher was reading it to us. But the fart jokes are not quite as amusing now as they were in third grade. And the dream stuff, it's all right. It's all right. I don't know what I'm going to end up saying for my review, except it's all right. It looks like, according to the copyright, that this was published in 1982. Which, I don't know, it's interesting to note. That's within my lifetime. Roald Dahl did. When did he die? I don't even remember. But he did live into the 80s and 90s, maybe. When my teacher read it to us in third grade, that was in the 80s. So I didn't realize that this would have been a relatively new book at the time the teacher read it to us. I just assumed like they were all classics, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from the 1960s or something. I still have little less than half the book to go, so maybe there'll be something that will change my opinion. Okay, moving on to the grammar book. So like I was saying, it's not been a great week for reading. The grammar book, while I'm on lockdown, has been on back burner, but I have been making a goal with myself to read 2 pages every day. Like 2 pages where you read 1 page, 2 page, and then turn the page. So I at least turn the page every day. And I didn't quite make it. I read 10 pages this week instead of 14. Partly just because I was really busy marking, and partly because, the pages of text go quickly enough. But then I got to a page of the exercises, which are always at the back of every chapter. And this one has some sentence diagrams. No, diagrams is the wrong word. Sentence trees. I'm supposed to draw the trees and say which mapping rules apply. And then, the answers are in the back. So, for example, here are some answers in the back. So the answers are in the back, but it takes me a bit to get out my pen and my paper and work through those exercises. So as I was busy with other stuff, it wasn't as easy to sneak in a page or two here during the day when you've got to actually work through the written exercises. So I stalled out on the written exercises at the end of the chapter. Try and maybe do better this week. I do appreciate that this grammar book is making me draw the grammar trees and check them at the back. I guess it's not making me. I could easily switch it. I could easily skip it. But I do actually appreciate doing it, because I think doing it and then being able to check your answer really helps you. I think really helps you learn the structure of English grammar. But I just, it was a busy week. So finishing up the chapter on negation here, and there were a couple things in this book, in this chapter, that didn't make sense to me. And maybe you guys on YouTube could help me out with this. I don't know. But it's chapter 10 on negation. And pages 194 and 195 are talking about making a sentence negative with no and making a sentence negative with not. For example, he didn't drink wine. He drank no wine. What's the difference? Well, it says often they're the same thing, but they can mean different things. They can shift in meaning sometimes. And one of the examples they gave, most of them actually made sense, but one of the examples they made is they said, semantic non-equivalence can also occur in the interaction of not versus no negation with quantifiers. And then the example they gave is they said, all the guests didn't drink wine, and then they have a not equal sign. All the guests drank no wine. So, sorry, I know this is going to show up in mirror image, but this is it. So this sentence is not equal to this sentence. And I was reading that and I thought, it seems pretty equal to me. All the guests didn't drink wine. All the guests drank no wine. And I was thinking, okay, well, what's the difference between didn't drink wine and drank no wine? But then I said, well, wait a minute. It's not a difference between didn't drink wine and drank no wine. Because, well, I mean, at least not only that, because they said semantic non-equivalence can also occur in the interaction of not versus no negation with quantifiers. So the quantifier here, in this case, all, has to be significant. So apparently if it's just he didn't drink wine and he drank no wine, then that is equivalent, I guess. But it's the all the guests didn't drink wine, all the guests drank no wine. That all the guests part is making them not equal. I can't work that out. And who knows? Maybe somebody will type it into the comments and I'll be like, oh, of course, how stupid I am. I guess I'm taking that risk now. Somebody help me out if you can. What is the difference between those two sentences? Why do they not have equivalent meaning? I wish it would have been explained in the text. Okay, the other thing that I had trouble with, again, this is not versus no. This is a couple pages later. They said, okay, they're talking about the difference. And they said, when no negation occurs, it is often in collocations such as see no reason, no more, no less, no longer. And then semicolon, in implicit denials in existential construction. Example, there is no milk in the house. Okay, so I know there is what is called an existential construction in English, like there is a tree. But how is that an implicit denial? There is no milk in the house. Why is that an implicit denial? I don't understand. And then it goes, as compared with contrastive, not negation, in explicit denials. Example, there isn't any milk in the house. So one is an implicit denial, and one is a contrastive, explicit denial. And I can't understand the difference. To me, that there is no milk in the house and there isn't any milk in the house seems like it's equivalent. And there was, I think, a couple more things here I had trouble understanding, but unfortunately, for better or for worse, I did not take notes when I was reading this chapter. I should have underlined the parts that I didn't understand. So there was possibly one more thing in that chapter that I didn't understand, but I didn't underline it, so whatever. I forgot it now. I should say that on the whole, I do find this book to be understandable. And it's certainly much easier than the other grammar books I've read this year and reviewed on this channel. Chomsky's Universal Grammar. That one was completely like. This one is understandable aside from a sentence here and there. I just had a thought listening to myself talk. Chomsky's Universal Grammar as well, and started off understandable. And then it was understandable except for a sentence here and there, and then it just got progressively more not understandable for me as I read. So I'm hoping the same thing won't happen to me with this book. But thus far, on the whole, it has been understandable. There's just sentences here and there like that where they seem to be dropping in terminology I'm not familiar with, or not maybe explaining things as well as they could. On the whole, I've been quite happy with this book. Okay, next, The Brothers Grimm. And I finished it. So this is all, yes, so last time I was on story 193. And I've finished all the rest of the stories there, from pages 802 to 845. Which means I have now read the complete Brothers Grimm, kind of. I say kind of because there were, I don't know, 7 editions or something like that. And this is the English translation of the final edition. There were some stories that were in the first edition that were not included in the final edition, and vice versa. Stories got added in and taken out as they went through the editions. But in terms of the final revised Brothers Grimm's work, which is a total of 200 stories, 200. I know it's in reverse. And then the children's legends, which consist of 10 legends at the end. So, Brothers Grimm, their final edition, consisted of 200 stories and 10 legends, which obviously raises the question, what's the difference between the story and a legend? And this, I thought this would be clear enough to me as I read it. I thought that as I read it, it would become clear enough to me. But it has not. I am still confused about what is the difference between a story and a legend. So I go to Wikipedia and I look this up. Read the Wikipedia page on it, and there's nothing in Wikipedia about it. So I go to Google. I said, what is the difference between the stories and the legends in the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales? And then I just get a whole bunch of pages talking about the difference between stories and legends generally. And you know how Google goes. You try and refine your search. So I'm trying to refine my search on Google. I can't find it. I'm sure it's out there somewhere on Google, but I can't find it. And this Wordsworth edition is no help. They don't give me any critical commentary or anything like that. As best I can figure out, the legends are all religious in nature, and several of them, but not all of them, use Bible characters. Like Legend 1 is Saint Joseph in the Forest, which is a story very similar in tone and plot structure to any of the 200 stories that have come before, but it's got Saint Joseph in it. But the problem with that is, in the preceding 200 stories, there are plenty of times when saints and Bible characters pop up. St. Peter pops up all the time in just the regular stories section. Adam and Eve pop up a couple times. Eve's children was one of the 200 stories. The Our Lady Mary has popped up in the 200 stories. And then not all of the legends have the Bible characters in them. Well, Legend 2, the 12 Apostles, does. Legend 2, the 12 Apostles strikes me as a bit odd. And do I have time to get into this? So basically what there is there's a poor mother, and she's got 12 children, and they don't have enough food. And so she's worried her children are going to die of starvation, but she doesn't want them to die before the Redeemer comes, the Savior of the world is born. So she prays, and then her 12 children are put into a deep sleep for 300 years until Jesus is born, and then they're awakened, and then they become the 12 apostles. And I thought, well, but that doesn't make any sense, right? Because we know from the Bible that some of these 12, like James and John were the son of Zebedee, right? We know they weren't all brothers and sisters. And besides that, that would mean Judas would have to be one of their number. So, yeah, it's... But I shouldn't apply logic to it because it's the Brothers Grimm. But then Legend 3 is the Rose, which doesn't have anything to do with any Bible characters, and it's implied that maybe there's an angel. Some of these don't have to do with the Bible characters at all. They're like Legend 9, the Heavenly Wedding. It's just about a poor peasant boy. But they all do seem to be about religious piety in some way. Well, no, except for story 1 is just, well, they all, they don't really seem that different from the 200 stories that came before, is the long and the short of it. So, sorry, I know I'm asking a lot here, but if anyone out there knows what the difference between the 10 legends at the end and the 200 stories in the complete Brothers Grimm is, let me know. But anyways, I have finished it now. So I'll be reviewing it on this channel someday. Again, the system I have is I'm trying to write out my written review first and sort out all my thoughts there. And who knows, it could be a week or 2 or 3, but I'll be back with a full review of this someday. So, I guess, why don't I just talk about the stories I read this week? So, I was on story 193 out of the 200 stories in the final edition, which is The Drummer, which, if you've been watching these reading vlogs, you're familiar with me saying this, is just a repetition of the same themes that came before it. So it's a drummer boy who goes out to save a princess from a witch, and the witch keeps giving him impossible tasks, but then the princess just combs his hair until he goes to sleep, and then she has a wishing ring, which allows her to complete all the tasks magically. And this exact same plot has shown up in one, maybe 2 other stories so far. So then eventually he does rescue her from the witch, and then they go back, and he's going to. He takes her back to his town. And he says, "I'm going to see my parents," and she says, "Don't kiss your parents on the cheek, otherwise you will forget about me." Um, and of course, he does kiss his parents on the cheek, and he forgets about her. And again, this is a plot point that's popped up so many times before, where the prince just forgets about the princess, or the hero just forgets about the princess. Sometimes they give a reason why he forgets about the princess, like you're not supposed to kiss your parents on the cheek. I mean that doesn't really explain it, but at least there's like something set up. Sometimes there's just nothing even set up there. It's just like when he came back, he had forgotten the princess, so then she has three different dresses that she wears, and she goes to see the prince with his new bride. He's got a new bride now, and each time she has a new dress on, and the new bride says, "Oh, I really love your dress. Can I have it?" And she says, "You can have this for one night, if I can sleep with the prince for one night." So they make the deal, and she goes to tell the prince, "Don't you remember me? I'm the princess you rescued." But each time the prince has a sleeping potion given to him. So he will sleep through the whole night, and he won't be able to hear the princess explaining it. So that whole thing, the beautiful dresses, the changing the dress for one night with the prince, the sleeping potion, that story has popped up, I don't know, like 5 times now. I I almost should have taken notes. Like, how many times does this plot element occur? How many times does this plot element occur? Because it's all just repetition of plot elements. In fact, I think I've talked about this very plot element repeating last reading vlog or a couple reading vlogs ago. Anyways, then we are on to 194, the ear of corn. Now this is a short one, just a couple paragraphs. Lots of these stories are only a couple paragraphs. And it just struck me as a really bizarre story because, like, nothing happens. So it says, okay, in old times, God still walked the earth, and the soil was so fruitful that there were all these corn all over. And one day, a little child was running, and the child fell into a puddle and got his clothes dirty. And the mother says, okay, well, we've got so much corn everywhere that's just growing plentifully. I'll just grab the corn and clean you off with the ear of the corn. And then God saw that, and he was so angry that she was wasting the good corn to just clean off her child's clothes, that he says, okay, from here on out, there's going to be no more ears of corn. And then all the people who were around heard this and fell on their knees and prayed and said, God, please just leave us some ears of corn, even if it's just for the innocent birds. And it says, the Lord who foresaw their suffering had pity on them and granted the request. So the ears were left as they now grow. Yeah, and let's see. Let me read that again, actually, see if this makes sense. The bystanders who heard this were terrified and fell on their knees and prayed that he would still leave something on the stalks, even if the people were undeserving of it, for the sake of the innocent birds that would otherwise have to starve. The Lord who foresaw their suffering had pitied on them and granted the request, so that the ears were left as they now grow. Actually, as I'm reading this again, maybe this does make sense. The first time I read that, I thought the ears were left as they now grow, meaning he left them exactly like they were, and that's how they now grow. But maybe that means the ears were left as they now grow, meaning as they now grow is in a diminished form from how they used to grow. Now maybe it does make sense. I'm out of time. That's my 30 minutes. So I'm going to stop here for this week. I'll see you next week.